stand by. The color first.
The views and opinions expressed during this live stream do not necessarily represent the views of Framing the World. Individuals are invited to be interviewed for their unique perspective on specific topics, and not because Framing the World agrees with or endorses all other areas of opinion. Listener discretion is advised.
All right, guys, we are back for another Answers in Creation episode. This has been a really fun show, Matt. I when we first started doing this, I didn't know, what it was going to turn out to be, and kind of like, but it really has exceeded my expectations. And, I've learned quite a bit from this show, and I hope you guys have too. Again, we're going to be joined with Matt Powell, of course, guys, and we have Dr. Raw Matt joining us here in a moment as well. But before we get to Dr. Raw Matt, I wanted to quickly just talk about Matt's new film. Now, Matt, you have a new film coming out on November 30th to YouTube, free to everyone, called The Atheist Religion. Can you just start off by just telling us a little bit about what they're going to get when they watch that movie and why it's important to share the movie when it comes out?
Sure thing, Paul. So basically, The Atheist Religion is a compilation of the best creationist arguments as well as the supposed best evolution arguments debunked. So we verify the creation ones with science. And the reason that anybody should watch it, and it should be for anybody, old and young, all the way down to children, to people in the nursing home. People need to see this film because this film actually shows what evolution actually teaches. And most people don't even know the crazy things that evolution actually teaches. And in this episode, we're going to get into some of the craziest things that evolution teaches out there. And Dr. Raw Matt's really good at bringing the so-called facts that these evolutionists have forward. So I'm looking forward to that. But with regards to the Atheist Religion movie, from start to finish, we are editing it to make it so it will glue the viewer from start to finish. And so when you watch it, make sure you have a nice hour and 15 minutes where you can sit down and just relax and enjoy hearing the facts and watching some atheists get schooled at the same time live. I actually interviewed one, Pastor Thompson interviewed one. And so we had a chance to see what they believed and see how it did not line up with science, and how, on the contrary, it just lined up with fantasy land fiction. I'll make believe a purpose for my life sort of a thing, which is what they do, religion. And so I'm looking forward to premiering it. It's coming out on the 30th on YouTube for free this November.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to seeing it. So how much of it do you have done right now, Matt? And how much how much hair are you pulling out right now?
Yeah, we're pretty close. I'm just over halfway. And so thankfully I've got all the footage gathered, and that was the hardest part, was gathering everything together. And so now that I've done that, just editing has been going so fast and smooth, and I've had a whole team of people helping me out. And so that's just been great, having a team of editors to run through this and fact check everything and edit everything. And so everything's coming along great. Looks like we're going to make the release date.
Awesome. And you guys, if you want to be one of the first people that watch this film, make sure you head out to Liberty Baptist Church in Rock Falls, Illinois. It is going to be premiered on November 29th. So you're going to be able to see it a day early, and you'll be able to support Pastor McMurtry. Is he going to play it at his church, or how is that going to work, Matt?
Yeah, they're setting up a setup at their church with a projector screen, and it's going to be kind of theater mode, theater style. And so we're going to have a nice speaker set up there. And so, premiering on the 29th, just after the church service. They're having a singing service first, and then the premiere will be right after that.
Well, I know my wife mentioned to me earlier today, like, we got to make sure we're there. We're going to try really hard to be there, Matt, for this premiere, because I think this movie is very important to get the word out about, and there's no better way to spread the message than to be at the premiere. It really just helps encourage people and get people pumped up about the new film. So I really hope everyone comes out to Liberty Baptist Church in Rock Falls, Illinois, November 29th. And, it's going to be interesting. I hear I'm in it, too. So, I mean, hopefully I make the final cut. I don't know what in the world I would possibly say to make this film, but this would probably be my first film that I've been in that's not mine.
Yep. Well, you made it in the final cut, my friend.
Oh, well.
You're there.
You still have 28 or 20 days to get rid of me or whatever it is.
12, but
yeah, okay.
Close enough.
Man, you only have half it done. You have 12 days left.
We're close. We're real close. Well, with the editing, we usually go pretty quick with the team work, and so.
Well, who you have helping you on this?
Yeah, so usually it's just some friends and then my family. So my family, what we do is we actually sit down in the living room and we go through everything, and we all listen for sound errors. We all look for video errors, little errors here and there, and we fact check everything.
Yeah, multiple eyes make such a big difference. One of the problems I have is I kind of keep everything close to the chest until like it's totally done, and then I show a couple people, and then usually people are busy by the time I'm like getting ready to I'm like, all right, let's do this, and like no one's ready to watch it, and then it's like, oh, too late, I gotta finish. It's like I didn't have a chance to show anyone. So that's cool. You have some family, some brothers are helping you out.
Yeah, they fact check everything. One of them fact checks. One of them looks for the video errors, audio errors. Yeah, we just work as a team.
Awesome. Well, guys, again, make sure you share this movie on November 30th when it airs. It's going to be aired sometime that day on Matt Powell Official YouTube channel. So make sure you subscribe to that channel right away. Just do it right now. We'll put the link in the description where you can go to subscribe to that channel. Guys, we are being heavily censored at Framing the World. We are now on our backup channel, and we're also kind of mirroring every video on like 5 different channels right now. So we are first premiering it on our backup channel, but then the next day it'll be going on BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble, UgTube, and Parler. So every video you see coming out of this channel, we're going to put them on all those different channels. Again, BitChute, Brighteon, Rumble, UgTube, and Parler. We're going to post these streams there. So, guys, make sure you subscribe to those channels, while I have a YouTube channel at all, to get the message out, because, obviously those channels don't get as many hits and people to go to them. So I need to kind of drive the traffic while I can. But we're doing a lot here at Framing the World. We just got done a bunch of new shirts, 2 shirts that relate to what we're talking about. Maybe I should show those first. We have Surfing Monkeys. Right here we have what evolution actually teaches. And this really goes along perfect with the show. And that's why I made this shirt. It was actually Matt's idea, but I wanted to have a couple shirts for the show, and then we got Evolution is Dumb shirt right here, which, it's simple, but I like it. It's cool. Again, guys, make sure you head over to framingtheworld.com. Support us over there. We're going to get Dr. Raw Matt on the line here in a minute or so. Yeah, guys, check out these new designs. I'm making them all in-house, so that's fun. I can make them like as you order them, I can make them. And so that definitely helps cut down on a lot of costs. But yeah, Matt, why don't you set up this episode, and then we'll go to Dr. Raw Matt. What are we going to be talking about today?
Sure thing, Paul. So we're going to be actually talking about the most ridiculous things that evolution teaches, the dumbest things that they believe in. And we're just going to go through each one of them and debunk them logically, because they like to go running to Sherlock Holmes, and they will actually quote Sherlock Holmes, who is a science fiction character, but they go quoting Sherlock Holmes in regards to evolution theory, and they'll say, once you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. And so that's why they believe that monkeys surf the ocean blue. It's not because it's based off any science, it's because, or even any evidence, it's just because whatever, once you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however, no matter however improbable it is, must be the truth. And so these people they assume that certain things are true based off of a Sherlock Holmes saying. And so, and that's what all these articles are saying. And some of the articles that we'll look at tonight, they just say Sherlock Holmes. And, they don't have any basis for what they believe. And like I've always said, evolution is impossible to defend honestly. It requires make-believing. And tonight, folks, you're going to see that 100% that these people, if you share any episodes of this show, this one would be a fun one to share with your evolutionist buddies that try to make fun of you for believing in creation. Flip the mirror on them. Tell them about the monkeys, their ancient ancestors that surfed the ocean blue 34 million years ago, or squids and octopi that came from outer space. Tell them about those things. So with all that said, I'm looking forward to the episode. Dr. Raw Matt, it's so good to have you joining us. How are you?
I'm doing good. Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, not a problem. I'm glad you're here. So, Dr. Raw Matt, we want to deal with the more crazy things that evolution teaches, and thankfully, you've been somebody that's been able to make me aware of some of the more crazy stuff that they believe. And so, tonight, if you're okay with it, we'll just talk about some of the wild stuff that evolution teaches.
Absolutely. You won't believe the things that it actually teaches. No matter what field you're in either. It doesn't matter if you're in neurology. It doesn't matter if you're in geology or paleontology or genetics. No matter where you look, when they get into the evidence for evolution, it becomes nonsense. You literally start laughing at what they believe. And you don't even mean to. It's just when you accept it, you don't actually realize what you're accepting. Remember, what we were taught in school is very simple. We're separated from the animals because of our opposable thumb. That's about what they teach you in the 6th grade, right? And then you go off into school and you just believe it. You don't question anything. So when things pop up that are controversial, they don't like to share that with the general public. They don't promote it very much. They kind of sweep it under the rug because they have to. It just seems too ridiculous, kind of like monkeys being in America. Why would they be here? Because according to the evolutionary theory, they can only be in Africa, right? That's on that continent. Well, when you start looking into it, they have to have arrived by getting over the ocean. So it's the same thing with so many animals. And that's just one aspect of so many we're going to get into today.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Matt. And to be frank, it reminds me of a discussion that I had with Dr. Grady McMurtry. We were actually out to lunch, and he said that if people knew what evolution actually taught, no one would believe in it. And, when you had shared these things with me initially about the monkeys surfing the ocean blue to find a place anew 34 million years ago, I didn't believe you. Frankly, and it's funny because when I did the research, and interestingly enough, I didn't believe you on the set until you had explained it and showed me that video that you made. But when I explained this to Paul on the first episode of this show, he didn't believe me. And in fact, a good friend, Pastor Stephen Anderson, I shared this with him not too long ago, and he's like, no, there's just no way. Like, all of us thought at the beginning that this is just completely unbelievable. Like, come on, joke
there's
over.
There's no way this is true. That was going through my head. There's no way this is true, but it was.
Yeah, you're literally thinking there's no way people would believe this. This is just too ridiculous. And oh, believe me, there's so much worse. There's so much worse than this.
Well, let's talk about some of the crazy stuff that evolution teaches, right? So on the show, we kind of covered the surfing monkeys. And we also covered the squids and octopi that supposedly came from outer space. A group of 33 scientists said that this is the most plausible explanation since they couldn't have evolved by Darwinian means. Dr. Raul, Matt, what's some other good stuff that we could look at and examine that these people believe in?
Well, we can also keep with the theme of surfing animals, because that seems to be a pretty fun one. But I think one that everybody else should know, because you're not going to believe it, is that they believe that chimpanzees, or primates in general, could write Shakespeare. But remember, to them, we're just apes. We just branched off and went down a different line and became a little bit smarter because we started cooking meat and our brain evolved better. And that's the only difference. So if you took a chimpanzee and put them behind a computer or a typewriter, eventually, with enough time, they could literally type out Shakespeare. So they actually decided, let's do the experiment. So in 2003, a team from the Plymouth University installed a computer inside the monkey enclosure, and they wanted to see what would happen because they had 6 monkeys in there, and they were like, let's just see what happens, right? It's going to be like an indestructible keyboard, right? Otherwise, they're just probably going to break it. Well, what happened is that after the computer was sitting in there and the monkeys went to town, they actually mostly used it as a trampoline. They beat on it for a while, and they threw their fecal matter at it for a while, and then they just started spamming the keyboard. And out of the entire process, when it was finally done after a few months, they had made about 5 pages of indecipherable text, mostly hitting the letter S and just holding it down. And so they go, well, the researchers, this must have been government grant money, because there's no way anybody would spend their own money to do this nonsense.
This is Are you serious? This is unbelievable, dude. Like, this is literally, Paul, what are you thinking right now?
No, this can't be true. Obviously, monkeys are just going to hit the keyboard. I mean, it's like,
they really predicted. I mean, obviously in science we make predictions, right? But they really predicted that would happen, that they would actually be able to type out Shakespeare.
Right. They go, well, they'll be able to type something, right? Just give them enough time. They'll learn what they're doing. Maybe they'll hit the buttons and they can start making words by accident. So what they did is, after the experiment was over and this indecipherable 6 pages of nonsense, mostly just hitting the letter G and S over and over and over, they broke the keyboard eventually because they slammed rocks against it. And then what happened is the researchers just said, well, what we need is more time and more monkeys. They didn't actually say, this is stupid. This is a waste of time. This is a waste of resources. Or maybe evolution isn't true. No, they literally said, we just need more time and more monkeys. This will happen.
Well, did they have like a full-time trainer just teaching these monkeys what to try to type, or how did it work? Did they just set this computer and just say, good luck?
Yeah, they put it in the monkey enclosure so that there was nothing else for them to do, and they awarded them every time they touched.
Okay.
You know, it's like, okay, they're touching the keyboard, let's give them some food. You know what I mean? They like doing it then. It was kind of an enticement, right? So the researchers, they treated it like a scientific experiment. They didn't just throw in a keyboard to a bunch of like monkeys that would never look at the thing. No, they were in trying to get them to actually type something coherent. But these are monkeys. This is how far gone their mind actually is.
Yeah.
And they got really mad. They wrote a very aggressive letter saying that other apes preceded you guys used the wrong type of primates, maybe, or maybe there needs to be a different variety. See what I mean? They falsified themselves by even doing this experiment. And then when they were like, okay, well, they obviously don't have the brain capacity, they're like, well, we need different kinds of primates now. So see what I mean? It's just more nonsense wrapped up in it. They're like, well, it can't not be true, so something else is going on here because we're primates. Why can we do it so easily, but they can't? So rather than just going, well, maybe they're a different kind of creation, maybe they're separate from us, or maybe there's something wrong with our theory. No, never questioned it at all. Just said, let's get more monkeys in here.
Wow. Well, I mean, it's interesting because they've responded to Team Standing for Truth, your team there, and I've seen them say, don't you effing get it? We are apes. We are evolved apes that came from apes. And they try to yell this stuff at you guys as if it's going to be somehow intimidating. And I just think it's kind of, I think it's hypocritical because they sit there and they say, well, the Bible's filled with a bunch of, hokey stories like a flood. Well, we've established on this show between the last 7 episodes that the flood is a scientific fact, whether they want to believe that or not. But what I find interesting is that they point to the flood as kind of a hokey story, quote unquote, when we actually observe floods happening. We've never observed primates surfing, let alone typing out Shakespeare on a keyboard. And it's funny because you're exactly right. They completely falsified themselves, and professing themselves to be wise, at the end of the day, they became fools. That's all I could say about that.
Yeah, no, if you really kind of look at what they're saying, when they get all mad at saying we're primates, because cladistically that's what they're trying to say, right? They've learned their niche. They don't have to be scientifically accurate. All they're doing is playing a word game. And they go, if you don't want to call us primates, what do you want to call us, right? I'm like, well, that's easy. Human beings, mankind, ape kind, pretty simple, but they convolute it, and they mix their taxonomic boundaries by crossing humans with primates. They do it all the time with things, and so that's a way for them to swindle it in, and it's used as equivocation because it tricks the mind of a child very easily, and that's all they have to do: get to a child really quickly, wreck their mind, indoctrinate them, and then they're gone for the rest of their life because of cognitive dissonance. So that's all that they really need to do, is just grab you really young, because few question anything when you grow up. That's what indoctrination does, right? So the less you can question, the more they've got you. And that's all they need, because once you get into adulthood, what does evolution ever have to do with anything in your adult life? Nothing. It never comes up again. You can live your entire life working at your job, having friends, watching sports, literally doing anything that you want, and evolution will never come up. But it's in the back of their mind. They believe that it's true. And that's the most detrimental thing of all, because that's what's ruining mostly their life, because they realize that life is short and we just need to live it up, party, and before we die, because nothing's going to happen, right? So it's all about pleasure, materialism. And that's the biggest detriment to the evolution theory that there is. They make you tell you that life is meaningless and pointless, and we exist because of a mistake, a chance, a blimp, right?
Incredible. So what other things could we talk about that evolution? And I hate to say this, but I actually did not get a chance to open your book. I've been editing film footage and just doing a bunch of different things. I know that you had written a book about all the craziest stuff that evolution actually teaches. And within there, what else could we kind of get into that is different from anything that we've ever discussed, as far as monkey surfing, or these monkeys that were in a computer lab? What other things could we discuss?
Here's a good one. How come we have the ability to speak? Because biologically, they found that macaques, the varieties of monkeys, they have the vocal ability to speak. Matter of fact, they've plugged them into electrodes and forced them to say words. And they come out gravelly, but you can understand what they're saying. So they said, what's going on here? How come we learned the ability to have language? So according to the evolutionary theory, there's about 6 different reasons for why we have the ability to speak language. And their most popular theory of all is called the bow wow theory, meaning that we started copying the sounds of animals, and that's how we learned to talk. So we saw a dog go bark, bark, so we named the dog bark, bark. See what I mean? And then they hear a bird chirp, and we named it chirp. And then all of a sudden, we went from grunting to language. This is called the bow wow theory. Unfortunately, there's very few words that ever exist in any language that actually match this. So it's just another made-up theory that has to go with well, what's going on here? How come we have this ability? And that was the best they came up with. Yes, I said there's 6, but at that bow wow theory is their top one. They actually hold to that one as the most beneficial theory that they have. Unfortunately for them, it's completely broken down with observation. So what I've done is I've looked at stochastic models. These are statistic probabilities where we look at different scientific things, which are looking at how many people would be required before language moves into a different acquisition to where we can learn it, rather than just saying sounds. And so what I've done is I go, okay, well, let's look at feral children that were actually raised by animals, and feral children that were neglected by their parents, and basically any child that was deprived of language growing up until the age of puberty. So what they did is, going back 350 years, I found that not a single study ever has taken a child that had never learned language. After the age of 13, they can never learn it, ever. And it's called the age of language acquisition probability. They basically, who was it? Suzanne Cuttress and Eric Lindbergh were linguists, and they worked with a feral child by the name of Jeannie Wiley. Now, she was chained to the toilet because of her incontinence, and she was locked into her bedroom her entire youth by her stepdad, or by actually her real dad. And they thought she was retarded, so she was considered an embarrassment. So the dad didn't want to be embarrassed, so he locked her in the bedroom. And she never learned language. She actually only knew a few words that the dad would ask her, right? Like, go to the bathroom, here's food, really simple stuff, but he never taught her language. So what happened is, after the age of 13, they found her. She had already gone through puberty, and they tried to teach her language, and it never worked. Just like every other example of feral children on Earth. After you go through puberty, you can never learn human language. So how did the first language have arisen? It either had to be discovered and evolved from a child under the age of 13, or you can't learn it. So it's see what I mean? See the problem that has to be overcome? Either a child has to invent language, or it can't be learned after the age of 13. So that's the biggest problem that they'll ever have, and they'll never be able to get over it, because that's been the biggest problem that we've ever had in the science of language. And that is trying to get anybody that's never learned any form of language over the age of 13 to learn language. They've never been able to do it. So how did it happen in nature with a small group of people? Impossible. God had to have taught Adam, or he had to instill it with Adam, and he knew it immediately. And I think that's how it went down, because if you look at scripture, God brought all the animals to Adam, and Adam knew how to name them off immediately. So God taught Adam language. It's the only reason we know it, because there is no natural path that exists in the evolutionary model to language. It doesn't exist.
What a joke it would be to say that there's a naturalistic explanation when we've already come to realize that it's not possible to have a naturalistic explanation. These people go on and on about, like, naturalism. We believe in a naturalistic worldview. How ridiculous.
Right. We don't even have the Brodmann areas of the brain, number 44 and 45. I mean, we have those areas that primates don't have. So even if they said, oh, they can learn it, no, they can't. They don't even have the ability to learn the language that we have in our brain. We're a completely different creation. But, everybody's always trying to prove how similar we are to primates, that they forget to look at the differences that there are. And language is a huge difference. Darwin himself said that speech is what separates us from animals by 95%. Darwin himself said that's what makes us different. So for anybody that's an evolutionist listening to say that has nothing to do with evolution, Darwin himself said it's the most important thing that separates us. So how can now we have over 350 years of scientific investigation in human language and have determined at the end of all of this, human language can't arise on its own? It's in a statistical probability. We've looked at all the models. None of them come even close. It's just ridiculous for them to keep claiming this bow wow theory when it doesn't hold up to history. We don't go to any written language on Earth and find that the bow wow theory exists. It's gone. You know what I mean? And then now to say even more ridiculous is that not only that, but humans worldwide that have never met each other all invented language around the same time, and writing systems and mathematics. That's ridiculous. Now you've just went from impossible to absolutely insanity, right? That's insane to think. So now not only do you have to jump over the impossible hurdle of children inventing language, but now you have to do it worldwide at the same time. Never going to happen. Never.
Scientifically and mathematically impossible. There's just no way for evolution or even just atheistic worldviews to be true. And I know they say, well, we don't have a worldview. It's just a rejection of a claim. Okay, whatever. The dictionary definition at the end of the day still stands. That's where I go, is the belief that there is no God. That's what an atheist is. They have a belief, it's in the positive, that there is no, or in the negative, that there is no God. And right. So, when it comes to these things, what did you say? The bow wow theory?
Yes.
That just sounds weird.
Yeah. Yeah, it's named after a dog being a bow wow, right? And then we copied the sound of the dog, and then we named it after that. But name a dog, name any language on Earth that is named after the sound the dog makes. Name a culture or a group of people that calls their dog by woof or bark. It doesn't even exist.
It doesn't exist. Like, what are they thinking? Like, have they ever observed this grammar that they're speaking of, that they're saying that they would have used back then to, copy off of these animals? That is just weird. I mean, that's just it's weak, man.
Yeah, that's another one of the problems too, is they forget that language requires grammar. They always go, well, monkeys have a language. No, they don't. They have primitive sounds that they can make. They can only make nouns, like a sound for like a snake, right? Really primitive. It's not language. It's a grunting sound of something that they need to portray because they're in danger. It's not language because language requires grammar. And their animals don't have language. No linguist on Earth would ever say that animals have anything above a basic communication skill. So an animal never will understand what tomorrow is. They can't say, I'll see you tomorrow. They can never understand it. They don't grasp anything like that because they only know simple, basic nouns. Human beings can process the past, the present, and the future. We can think about tomorrow and we can express it. Animals, you tell a dog, we'll go on a walk next week. It doesn't know what you just said. There's no possible way that it can. It can't fathom these things. They're basic, primitive skills. And so, which is quite funny too, because they said primates are our smartest, closest really living ancestors. Well, guess what? They've actually found birds that are smarter than primates. Did you know that? They started doing the test to see how smart are animals. So they went over and they tested crows, and they actually found that crows, after the research test, scored much higher than chimpanzees on intelligence tests and memory tests. So then they went over the kea. They're the little green birds that people like to have as pets. They actually found that they were even smarter than the crows, and that they outscored again chimpanzees on memory tests. They outscored gibbons by astronomical amounts. So I found that was pretty funny. That's also in what I wrote, showing the different animals that are smarter than primates.
Now, whenever we talk about these primates that supposedly surfed the ocean, yeah. I have shared the articles from National Geographic, just all sorts of different news outlets that actually talk about this, and even videos where they actually believe this. And just when I thought that I had seen it all, just when I thought, man, like, it can't get any more crazy than that. I mean, surfing monkeys, come on. You had sent me an article that you found from November 7th of 2020. It was peer-reviewed just this month, just in time for the film, actually, because there's no way we can avoid putting this in the movie. It just is funny that they actually think that that dinosaurs did the same thing that monkeys did. Now, if I'm not mistaken, they actually think that these dinosaurs rafted from America to Africa, correct?
Well, here's the thing, is these dinosaurs migrated from America over to Europe and then had to surf from Europe down to Africa, because in their model during the Cretaceous period, 65 million years ago, there was only an ocean around Africa. So there were no land bridges. So it would be impossible for dinosaurs to get to Africa. Well, guess what? They found the bones in Africa. So rather than they're saying, well, I guess the flood did it. Nope, impossible, right? So therefore their model still has to be true. So guess what? The dinosaurs learned to raft as well. They had to have. In their model, dinosaurs had to raft. But it gets even worse, because now I found even more, and I'm going to share it in a video with you guys in a minute.
Well, real quick, what was the name of that article? I'm trying to pull it up here, and I'm not seeing it.
Duck-billed. Just type in duck-billed dinosaurs.
Okay.
Raft. Yeah,
I see it then. Okay, I have this article.
Yep. Duck-billed dinosaurs.
Fossils discovered in Africa for the first time.
Yeah, actually, if you scroll down, you can see where they actually say they swam on debris.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I got it right here for you. Don't worry, guys. Would you like me to screen share, or is that even?
If you can do that. I don't know.
Good.
All right. Let's see real quick. I'm sure there's a way. Bear with me, guys. I haven't used Skype much.
Not a problem, man. Take your time.
Oh, start sharing.
Wow, that's an intense desktop, bro. Wow, I don't know if I've ever seen a desktop like that in my life.
Yeah, I make a lot of videos.
Wow.
Okay, good. That means you can see me.
And you put them all on your desktop. How do you survive like this?
Oh no, there's folders inside of these folders.
Yeah, I know, but how is this?
He's a scientist. It's what they do.
I kind of have a photographic memory, so it's helpful. All right, everybody. There isn't any sound, so you get to just watch as I go through this with you guys, okay? So here's the Earth, and what you're looking at is the continents, looking at it from a map. Here's the spreading of the continents as they separate. Now, here's the thing. You're seeing, looking at here, you're finding dinosaurs that exist across continents. So here they are in Antarctica and India and Africa and South America. And this really shouldn't be possible in the evolutionary model because remember, these continents split over hundreds of thousands and hundreds of million years. So we have a huge problem with their model by looking at these maps because these animals should be on one continent, not all of them. Now, if we say that these continents split as you're looking at right now, well, what would we should find if the creation model is true? Well, we would expect to find exactly what we do see, and that is, look at this. The circles represent fossils that match, and they match around the continent. So right through this section right here, I'll circle it for you guys, are the exact same fossils that exist on the other continents. So if the evolutionary theory is true, those bubbles shouldn't match because of the slow continental drift over time. These species wouldn't exist in these clusters. These are insects and plants. And when the continents were to split apart, they would obviously die, and there would be a remnants of them spreading across the continent, not just instantly dying at that location. But since they were instantly buried in the flood, that is what we should expect to find, and that's what we see. Now we can see the mid-Atlantic ridge right here in the middle, rupturing, causing the continents to quickly spread apart from the Noah's flood. This is what we should expect. Now, here's the difference with our model. When we go down to the south tip of America right here, we can see Antarctica. And guess what? We find dinosaurs here. We find right here is the Hadrosaurus dinosaur, the Coelurosauros, and theropods. And these were never supposed to exist down here, ever. They were never in Antarctica because that continent never touched in their model, ever. Not even in their Pangea theory. So how did these dinosaurs get here? Guess what? They had to have rafted. These dinosaurs had to build rafts or jump on debris.
I mean, that's a logical conclusion.
Are you kidding me? So it wasn't just duckbills then, because I thought it was just duckbills.
Correct. It's not. Duckbills are for Africa. This is South America, and this is Antarctica. This is a continent where these dinosaurs supposedly never lived and were never at. So why are there fossils found here? Because their model is wrong. And here's how to prove that it's wrong. Because these were connected at one point. And guess what? This is over 1,000 kilometers away. So there's no way they walked or swam it. They had to have rafted if their theory is true. And the problem is the current doesn't push them this way. The current pushes them out to sea. They would have all died. And these dinosaurs would have had to have mates with them. They can't surf by themselves. What are they going to do? Clone themselves? They have to raft with their mates. So they have to raft with a group of them. These dinosaurs kill them. These are carnivores. They would kill each other on the raft with no food. You expect me to believe that they're going to be on a raft together all hanging out? Hey, how you doing? I'm a plant eater, and I don't have any plants to eat. Oh, don't worry. I'm a carnivore. I'm just going to eat you. Oh, well, great. I'm never even going to live to get over here then. See? Nonsense. And then here's where it gets even worse. There's plants that exist in the same areas. So what, did the plants jump on the raft? Look how many plants are found over here as well. So you tell me all these plants, what, the dinosaurs decided to pluck them out of the ground and take them on the raft with them? Come on. Common sense has left the door with evolution when it comes to this. This is their death blow right here. So now we see plants and dinosaurs all rafting together, and now we have trilobites. Guess what? Every continent fits together. We find millions of trilobites in this region and all the different continents. And guess what? When the continents ripped apart really quickly, they brought those trilobites that died in the flood with them. And if it was over millions and millions of years and the continental rift was really slow, it wouldn't be placing the trilobites on the opposite side of continents. Some of them would have survived, others wouldn't. Now here's the duckbill thing, okay? Here's Eurasia. That's what you're looking at right now. And you're looking at what the Earth looked like, apparently, to evolutionists during the Cretaceous period, when these dinosaurs supposedly lived. Now I want you to look at all that region. Sorry, there's the dinosaur. This is the one that built the raft, by the way. So he's really good with his hands. So as you can see now, the water right through here, this is the massive body of water separating the area that they had to surf through. All this, they had to come down here. And they also had to ignore the currents, so they were probably really good at rafting. And then they had to get down here, and guess what? Oh, I just kind of rewound myself. My bad. So they got down, boom, we found them in Africa. So we found their bones down here, and they should never have been, because Africa was never there. So here's a couple studies talking about what you were looking for. And then we jump right over, and guess what? Oh, they rafted on debris right here. The first thing it says, how they got there. The next one, look at that. Duckbills could have reached the new continent by rafting on debris. Right there. They don't even hide it, and they're not even ashamed of it. Why? Because it's the only rescue device they possibly have for that model to be true. Because they ignored the flood. It can't be true. The continents were never connected like that, and they never ripped apart quickly. Well, when you have the evidence slapping you in the face, you have to come up with theories like this. Boom. And then I always tell people, okay, think about it, everybody. They have to have rafted in groups, okay? You can't have one dinosaur rafting by itself. You just can't. It has to breed and it has to repopulate. Why do we find populations of dinosaurs in those regions? We don't just find one dinosaur and go, oh, I guess one must have swam there by itself. We don't find that. We find populations. So therefore, their model's wrong, and we vindicate that dinosaurs don't surf. And neither do plants. Neither do plants, everybody.
Well, so the fact that we actually find these things. So I have a question for you, because this is something I don't know for sure. This would be my prediction, is that if we're finding these dinosaurs in different areas of the world, obviously the only way that I could explain that as a creationist would be through a global flood. I don't know, is that a good way to look at finding these dinosaur fossils everywhere? Do you think the global flood would have carried them that length?
Oh, yeah. Think about dinosaur graveyards. The biggest dinosaur graveyards are from Florida all the way up to Canada. That's a dinosaur graveyard. That's a massive one. And there's also one in Montana. It's one of the biggest on Earth, and it's a huge dinosaur graveyard. Those are like the largest, and they all got swept into that area. But if we go back and we look at the map, what do you notice? You notice that when these fossils are found in these regions during the split of the continent, if they were still alive over slow tectonic movement, and this is happening over millions of years, you would expect these dinosaurs to be moving and migrating and still alive. You wouldn't expect them all to die in that region unless it was a flood. So why do we find fossils buried in these exact regions where the split was? Is because they died from the burial of the tsunamis coming across, being buried rapidly, dying, and there was no life. They weren't living for millions of years or anything like that. The flood killed them, put them right where they're at, and then the continents ripped apart and drifted to where they were or where they are today. So that is the best way to explain it, because why aren't they migrating? What, did the plants all decide to die at the same time, and all the dinosaurs decided, I think I'm going to live right here, I like beachfront property? It doesn't even make sense. So they all died in a cataclysm, and the continents ripped apart really quickly, and then we find their fossils. That's it.
So Matt, obviously you're kind of speaking over my head, because I haven't studied this at all. And it's pretty awesome stuff. Like, hey, folks, if you're tuning in right now, make sure you go back to the beginning of this episode, watch up until this point, because I don't know about you, Paul, but I'm getting a good education.
Yeah, so this is kind of interesting to me because I've never heard this talked about by a creationist, because I always heard of the continent splitting apart being Pangea and just believing that was false. But what you're kind of saying is Pangea. What's the difference between what you're saying and Pangea, Matt?
The scripture talks about all the continents being connected and all the water was in one place. So that would mean that the scripture is actually talking about all the continents were together at one point in time. And then what happened is during the flood, the continents broke apart from what we can see today is called the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. When we look at the bottom of the ocean, we can follow a giant rift that tore open in the earth, and they are jetted up. They're miles high. That's how tall these things were. The water ripped through there, and as it was gushing out, the continents were rapidly, over 1 year, pushed into the place where they're at today. And that's what caused all the volcanism. That's what caused the Ice Age to form. And so that's what we would see as a young Earth creationist. A rapid version of what we're seeing in the world today is what they say happens slowly, because we do see the continents connecting like a puzzle. So when we see that, why is that? Why can it be like they look like they're a puzzle if deep time isn't true? Well, it happened rapidly. That's
okay.
The only
So basically what you're saying is the difference between Pangea and Pangea. They say Pangea took over millions of years. This happened. You're saying it happened instantly from the flood, and and it is interesting. Can you go back to the map there and show us where those ridges are in the Earth? And it's kind of right between the continents.
Yes, yeah, there would be a good one. There's a really good one over here. Yeah, you'll be able to see the rift. There's a good one. There it is. That's the Mid-Atlantic Ridge running right through here. It looks like clouds, kind of, but this is the rift. And that's where the floodwaters, the fountains of the great deep that broke forth. What are the fountains of the great deep? It's talking about this area right here in the great deep of the ocean. The under the ocean ruptured forth. We can still see them today. If you go underneath, you can still see water seeping into the ocean, and that's from the water that was during the flood. Yeah, it was very salinated, so it's very deep and very highly concentrated in salt water.
Well, some must have pressed against the Earth, because we have Mount Ararat that used to be lower, so obviously something really intense happened to the Earth.
Yes.
And some major climate. Can you talk about that more? Because that's so interesting.
Yes. Matter of fact, in my flood model, I believe that what caused it was a comet impact. And the comet impact hit about over here in this area of South Africa. Because if you look at where the rift actually occurs, there's an impact zone and then a place where it branches out in 3 different directions. Everywhere else, it's all connected in one big piece, and it runs around the entire Earth. So it cracked the Earth like an egg. And what did it was a comet. And when the comet hit around 4,500 to 5,000 years ago, it impacted, ruptured it, caused the pressure from the underwater oceans to rip through, because it was highly pressurized at this time. So that's what it took, a massive impact, like you said. It wasn't just some little trivial thing. It was a massive impact crater that caused it.
Incredible. So, Dr. Matt, when you bring these facts forward to non-believers and evolutionists and people that like to go running to time as a rescue device, how do they even respond to, for example, like the dinosaurs that had to have surfed or got on debris, to put it in fancy terminology like they like to do? How do they respond to that when you bring that forth to them, these arguments?
They say, well, it's a possibility. We go, we don't know, we weren't there, but I mean, it's the only logical conclusion. So basically, they're going to reach to a storyboard. They have to, because nothing else will account for what did this. So they know that the evidence exists, but there's no other way around them saying that they had to get to those regions. So that's what we just call a storyboard. It's like, what evidence do you have for rafting? They go, well, we don't have any. So you believe it on faith. Well, no, we don't like that word faith, so we're going to say we believe it because it happened, and therefore it's true. See what they did? They used the belief of evolution to push their belief on why it happened. They go, why are you here? Well, we evolved and we're here. See what I mean? It's a circular argument. It's a way to get away from actually debating the topic. It's an illogical debate, because it's basically saying that only my theory exists and there's no others that can possibly exist. Therefore, I'm going to ignore everything that you're saying because I like my model more.
Right, because they think evolution is true from the start. And not only that, it's protected by law, so they're not even allowed to free think outside of it in the classroom. So hypothetically, if you brought any of this evidence forth to a science, quote unquote, professor, they're going to reject it immediately and say, hey, it doesn't go along with what we've already established to be true. And it just seems like all they can do is go running to these supposed beneficial mutations, and then they just ignore the rest of the evidence, which I don't really think there are any beneficial mutations to begin with. But it's just ridiculous how they try to defend this against all reason. They will hold to this against all reason.
Yeah, what I usually do is I tell them, I say, okay, you want to believe in beneficial mutations? That's fine with me. I'm going to give them to you. Matter of fact, I'm going to give you as many as you want. That's how confident I am. Now, what I want you to do is go online and type in Mendel's Accountant. It was written by Dr. John Sanford, and it's a program that you can place as many beneficial mutations in the evolutionary process as you want, and it will fail every single time. It's called the waiting time problem, and there's not enough time, even in the evolutionary timeline. So anybody that says, well, beneficial mutations did it, say, go ahead and go to Mendel's Accountant and run the program, and you will see quickly that you were lied to. Hands down, the math doesn't lie. Numbers can't lie. So, and by the way, you're completely correct, because check this out. I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to show you what happened when I submitted to peer review on their response to me. So I'm going to enlarge this for everybody. This was their reply. We consider that the work does not represent the type of advance that PLOS biology seeks to publish. When I published my Young Earth Creation study showing that mutation rates track back to 2 people, and that those 2 people had children up till the flood. It's called the patriarchs, and the living patriarchs had children at a very old age. And I showed that in a peer-reviewed study that I submitted to them using their own methods from a Kong study that was done in 2015 using de novo mutation rates, and they rejected it without reading it because they saw that it had something to do with the antediluvian people, which means it was creation-oriented, and they didn't look at it. They said, we don't want to represent that here. They rejected it and returned it to me. So now I have proof that they're biased, and they don't want to look at even facts and evidence if it conflicts with their very own model. So what I did next is that now I've submitted to a creationist area. Now I'm going to see what people that aren't biased, that want to look and see what I've done, taking evolutionary model and implementing it into ours, and seeing how you can actually use the pedigree rates, which are discovered by evolutionists, and actually prove our model using theirs. So it'll pass. You'll see. I ran all the numbers. They're very precise, but that's just a perfect example how they won't even look at our work at all.
That's incredible.
They want nothing to do with it.
That's incredible. Like a lot of this just leaves me speechless as far as, you can only, it's incredible when you bring these facts forward to them. Obviously they have ridiculous counter arguments, quote unquote, for the standard arguments that a young earth creationist would bring forth, like polystratofossils or, families of animals, everything bringing forth after its kind. They have weak arguments to combat you with. But it just gets all the more weak, the more complicated that you enter into science. Everything on their side just becomes totally weak and totally impossible. And by the way, I don't know how many other things we could look at that they teach, but I just want to say thank you for bringing that up, because this is great flood evidence that we could even include in the movie. There's just so much that I feel like you could do a full film on the crazy things that evolution teaches, just on the crazy stuff alone.
Oh, in my book, I have 100 rescue devices that they use. I told you 2 of them tonight. 2. So
2.
There's so many to go over. It's ridiculous. Matter of fact, let's do a couple right now, just real quick. Okay, we're going to skip forward. to the little rafting guy. So look at this. Here we have, in the Cretaceous period, two snakes that have been intertwined, and they died while fighting one another. Now, the Cretaceous period is 65 million plus years ago. Well, what did they discover when they looked at these two snakes? Well, one of them was unidentified. It never existed. The other one was a rattlesnake. Uh-oh. You know what that means? According to evolution, rattlesnakes didn't exist until 12 million years ago. So what's a rattlesnake doing 65 million years ago and older? Uh-oh. See, in their model, it can't make sense because rattlesnakes hadn't even evolved yet. And they know it's a rattlesnake because they looked at the type of interior that the snake had. And they found, oh, wow, that's a modern day snake. What's that doing there? So what did they say? What was the rescue device? Well, a modern-day snake was probably going by and saw an old dead snake and decided to wrap it up and try to eat it.
You've got to be kidding me.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, my
snake would have been
word.
petrified. A snake's not going to eat a rock.
Yeah, it's petrified material, 60-some billion years old, and you think that
It's
a
dust.
rattlesnake is going to, like, fight with it and get tangled up with it and try and eat a rock? I mean, that is just, wow.
Nonsense. How about this? Here's a dinosaur stepping through millions of years of evolutionary time. Remember, these rocks don't bend, right? So these are supposed to represent millions of years. Yet here's a dinosaur, probably a brontosaurus, running from the flood, stomping through mud before they solidify to become hard. And guess what? We see the evidence of what is this? Why is that a dinosaur footprint going through millions of years? And is that the only one? Nope. Here's another one right here. And this one's even stronger. Look at this. This one not only pressed through the bedrock, it pressed all the way down through through the deeper layers, going back 100 million years. That shouldn't be possible in the evolutionary time period, because you go to the top. Why would a dinosaur be pushing through when these are hard rock? You can't push through granite. You can't push through sandstone like this. It wouldn't bend. It would break. So it's just more evidence of the flood. We can find it here as well. Here's a dinosaur footprint in coal. Coal, which is supposed to form over millions of slow geological time. Here's a dinosaur, a land horse. Here's a horse with fish dying in flood. Here's a dinosaur with a fish. That looks like a, that was a little too fast. That's a dinosaur with, it looks like a catfish. It's a catfish doing there. These are all from books. I put the links down at the bottom for you guys. These are actual evidence. Why in the world is land life doing with aquatic life? It's because they died in a flood. It's simple. Here, you ever get this one? It's impossible that it rained for 40 days and 40 nights for Noah's flood. You guys are idiots for believing that a global flood could cause a rain for that long. You creationists are nothing but cretards. Let me show you what our model says. It rained for 2 million years straight. Oh, no. Oh, no. Why did I have to open my mouth? So why rain constantly fell for 2 million years? So anytime the scoffers come and they go, rain for 40 days, that's stupid. It can't rain for 40 days straight anywhere. Remind them, you believe that it rained for 2 million years. Pull your head out of the clouds, buddy. And you have something to say?
No, keep going, man. I'm enjoying it.
Okay, here we go. Now it's going to get into the fun stuff. Here's one of my favorite studies. This is a sweeping gene study, the largest ever done of its kind. It was done in 2018. The results were so damaging that they had to put a warning on their own label. But before we get to that, let's see what they said. They mentioned that this is the most data-rich, clear, general facts of all evolution. Yes, they said facts. What are these facts? It is that all species have clear genetic boundaries and nothing much in between, like Darwin said, and that all animals emerged at about the same time as humans. Interesting, isn't it? So you've heard of this study. I know you have. So here we're going to get into it. This quote is amazing because this one proves that it was a global flood. Here, the scientist finds that the data from barcoding, which looks at the CO1 gene in mitochondria, looked at all the different species and found that they have the same amount of diversity, which is low genetic diversity, which can only prove that the Earth is young. And then what we see when we get down here, they didn't expect this. He said, what happened? Did herring really pass through an equally recent bottleneck, and anchovies too? You know why they're so confused at that? Because why would fish go through a bottleneck? Let's say that a supervolcano, let's say that Yosemite went off right now. Yosemite would decimate the Earth. There's no doubt about it. It would kill most of humanity. Lots of species would die. There would be no cheetahs left. The cheetah would go extinct. And then years later, we would come out and we'd be like, okay, well, let's see what really died. What happened here? Well, we're going to find that a lot of species died from this bottleneck. There's no doubt. But guess what? The ocean isn't going to be that affected. You wouldn't find all of aquatic life going extinct from a volcano. Well, guess what? The evolutionary bottleneck predicted that it was probably a volcano that about 170,000 to 200,000 years ago caused this bottleneck. That's why they're saying herrings and anchovies. It makes no sense. But in our model, it makes perfect sense because a global flood is going to kill aquatic life. And that is exactly what we see, and that is exactly what this study discovered. Now we're going to go to the next part. And guess what? The conclusion of the very scientist himself, he said right here, I fought against this as hard as I could. He did not want to believe the very evidence that he saw because it conflicts with the evolutionary model. And guess what? Look at what they say themselves. Ooh, there is no trace in the geological record for any global event 200,000 years ago. Wait, what? You want us to believe that 200,000 years ago, a global catastrophe wrecked all of life, all in the oceans and on land, but there's no evidence for it. You guys are smoking something that the world really wants right now. That's insane. That's crazy. So here's from my book called The Rescue Device. Look at what they had to add. They added this on December because everybody was going to read the study. And they said that this study is grounded and then strongly supports Darwinian evolution. Basically, nothing to see here, people. Move along. Nothing to see here. Basically, their study destroyed the evolutionary timeline and destroyed evolutionary model. We proved that everything went through a recent bottleneck and that all life was from a global flood. That's what they did for us, and they proved it. And then they said it was a general fact. And then when they went back and they looked at everything, they're like, "This is horrible. We've proven Darwin wrong. There's no species in between anywhere, not in the fossil record, not in biology. Everything's just coming right out of a bottleneck, and it's recent because they all have low genetic diversity." They were in huge trouble. So that's why I threw this one in there, because they stepped on their own foot. But while they were stepping on their own foot, they kept stomping it over and over and over until there's no longer a foot. That's how embarrassing that study was for them.
You know what's funny? Mark Stokel and David Thaler both, when they came out with that study back in 2018, I actually uploaded that study to my documentary, Science Falsely So Called. That was the key scene, actually, and I referred to it when I pulled out that card, or pulled out the study on the Raging Atheist. And I said, hey, I'm going to pull out my trump card now, and all the atheists, they were laughing. They're like, that's his trump card, how weak. Well, if you look at the study, it says exactly what you just said. And that's exactly why I put it in the documentary, because that's powerful evidence. And all they could do is say, well, the study was written wrong. That was their rebuttal, was that the study was written wrong. So apparently they just think that this peer-reviewed study that came out, that was published on Tech Times and other scientific sources, was just written down wrong. I mean, how pathetic is that?
Well, first of all, they have to deny that it's the Rockefeller University that did this study. It's the largest study ever of its kind, meaning they went out and they literally tested individually hundreds of thousands of different species. Hundreds of thousands. And then after they got the results, they were so confident that they literally said right here, this is the most data-rich and general facts in all of evolution. So now the atheist is denying their own evolutionists by saying that it's not the most data rich and it's not a fact at all. They literally are now denying the evidence because it conflicts with what they want to believe. Do you see how they cherry pick? It's only the internet atheist that does it, though. You tell a regular person walking down the street that believes in evolution and you show them this, the logical conclusion is, damn, I was lied to, right? That's what we're doing. We're exposing that they were lied to. Only the insane person gets mad that we're telling them that they were lied to and then jump to the defense of those that lied to them. That's what we're dealing with online. But this is just a handful of people. You know what I mean? Atheists are like 5% of the world's population, but they're the vast majority on YouTube and things like that. So it seems like there's a lot of them, but there just aren't. They're just the most unhinged and the most verbal. Usually it's the most small demographic of people that are the minority that make the largest noise. You would swear that half the population is probably gay by the simple fact that they make such a big deal out of it. But in reality, they're a minority of about 12% worldwide. So that's a very small minority, but they make the biggest amount of pressure and noise that they're heard very, very loudly. It's the same thing with the critics. They're like, this is all lies. So they hand wave and they scream and they go, they don't know what they're talking about. And then the person coming to listen goes, well, I guess that dude raging out must know what he's talking about. Why is he so irate? What's going on with him? He must know something that these creationists don't. In reality, I've read through the studies. I've read all of them. This is one of the most damaging things that could ever happen. You know how they actually got the date for 200,000 years? They actually had to make that up. They made it up in the 90s and have been trying to prove that date ever since. But in this study, they actually didn't use the mitochondria at all. It's not a biological test. They actually went to archaeology. They pulled out a woman that was an archaeologist and said, can you give us a date for when this probably happened? And she goes, sure. And she said, I'm going to use history to date this. And she went to archaeological sites and said, see, this can prove that. In reality, she didn't do anything. She just took a paycheck. You know, there was no science at all for why she said there was 200,000 years ago.
Totally weak. Totally weak. What these people just crack me up so much. You know, and it just goes to show that a lot of them are just willingly ignorant and just dishonest. And I've always said that evolution is impossible to defend, honestly, if you know the science, if you're aware of the facts and the data that's around you.
Yeah. There's so much evidence against it that they're basically fighting. I mean, if evolution was true, I mean, you would have so much evidence for it. There would be no doubt. No doubt. There would be no competing theory if evolution was so written in stone and such a fact. I mean, what do they say? 95% of scientists believe in evolution. Okay, let's say that number is true. How in the world is it so easy to get in there and debate against these scientists and beat them then? If 95% of the scientists are trying to prove evolution and they can't even do it very good, imagine if 95% were creationists. It would be over. There would be no more debate. But there's only a handful of creationists, and we've replaced Darwin a long time ago. That's what makes Dr. Jensen's book so good, Replacing Darwin. He literally came out and said, this is the alternative model. You guys say beneficial mutations are what drive evolution forward and what brought pond scum to people. I'm saying no, that everything happened relatively quickly after the creation of all things, and they happened through gene conversion and recombination, and these rates are fast. And what happens when we look inside of things, we see exactly that. We see fast rates of everything. So the mechanisms for what they believe in are written in myth. And then the evidence for what we're talking about is actually what we see. When we look in the genome, we see everything is fast. We see fast mutation rates happening that we can track back just thousands of years ago. And that shouldn't be the case if evolution's true. There should be no genetic similarity between anything if evolution is true. But yet when we look inside of things, what do we see? Genetic similarity everywhere. It's because evolution's not true. It's just that simple.
That's incredible. That's incredible. And as we continue, Dr. Ralmat, is it possible that we could see you too? Because what I want to do is I actually want to use some of this in our film. So if we could actually see you, that'd be helpful too. Sorry about that.
Let me turn that off.
But
Stop
yeah,
sharing.
man, this has been incredible. Just incredible. I mean, this is probably for me. I usually do the majority of the teaching on these episodes, but man, like I can say that I learned a lot so far. And Paul, what do you think?
Well, I want to do more research on what I'm calling Pangea, because that's all I know about the terminology. What do you call that, Matt?
I would say it's plate tectonics, because plate tectonics is the shifting of the continents from one another. So Pangaea was one of the original continents. It was just the name of a single continent.
Yeah.
And after Pangaea, hundreds of millions of years ago, the plate tectonics started shifting slowly, and they believed that that's when the continents started moving into where they're at today, slowly over deep time period. As where ours is called catastrophic plate tectonics, and it's catastrophic because it happened quickly and the mountains formed in. It even says in our Bible that the mountains were formed at the end of the flood. So there was no Mount Everest to flood. It wasn't there. So the old world only had high mountains, the Bible said. It didn't, you know what I mean, or high hills. It didn't say anything about massive mountains growing up. So it was very easy to flood the old world because it wasn't very tall. And then as the water come out and then the continents were slamming at the very end of the flood, they built the Rockies and everything that we see today. And it's what created the Ring of Fire, all that. So you'll like looking at it that way. One thing that I always find quite funny is they say that the earth was made from meteor bombardment, meteor showers hitting the earth over and over. It was a molten lava mess for eons and eons, and then it cooled down, and then a comet hit and brought our ocean water in. It's like that falls apart instantly when you look at granite, because when granite is heated and melted, it can never turn back into granite. It can only become rhyolite. So why do we have granite on Earth? Or how about the mere fact that when we go in the geologic record and we look at all the different layers of rock, do you know how many meteor impacts we actually find? You're going to laugh. So remember, 4.5 billion years of meteors hitting the planet. We have 120 meteor impacts everywhere on Earth, ever total. Wow. That's it. And that means that that's above the KT boundary and below the KT boundary. So below it is when dinosaurs lived. That's the pre-flood world. And then above it is the current world that we live in. Well, guess what? After the flood, how many impacts do we see? 71. How many do we find underneath it? 39. Very small amount. The number has only gone up recently, but then I started investigating meteor impacts, and a lot of what they thought were meteor impacts are actually volcanoes. They look very similar because some volcanoes don't go up. They actually go down underneath the ground when they erupt. So we can mark off most of those now as well. It's hilarious. They're losing everything that they needed, everything. I mean, the Earth couldn't even have formed in their model now. It's gone. You're literally saying that the Earth formed from meteors, but we can't find any meteors and we don't find any impacts. What?
Well, I went out to like one of the largest meteor impacts in the world. I think is in Arizona, and that wasn't even that big.
Yeah, small. I know the one you mean. Yeah, they're not that big, and they're definitely not going to wipe out everything on Earth, like they did with the dinosaurs. Plus, if it did, the dinosaurs would have slowly been dying off. An impact is only going to kill something around the vicinity of where that impact was in South America, right? And it would hit, and it would destroy everything in that area. And then what'll happen is the debris would be in the upper atmosphere. It would darken out the sun. The plants would die, and then the dinosaurs would start starving to death slowly. We'd find different deposits of them. What do we find? We find like perfectly preserved dinosaurs, and we find them right up to the KT boundary, and then they're gone. And then boom, and then there's no more dinosaurs. It's because during the flood, there was massive volcanism. Volcanoes pump out iridium. That's what caused the KT boundary. It wasn't a meteor made of the iridium, because if it would have impacted, it wouldn't have placed a perfectly exact same layer around the entire Earth. It would have only placed the iridium layer around the impact zone within hundreds of miles around it. It wouldn't be worldwide, and it wouldn't be a perfect layer. It's obvious the volcanism did it. But you see how bad they can twist the evidence? They can just say, well, there's iridium. A meteor can be made of iridium. Dinosaurs are gone. They must have died from a meteor, so therefore we've got our evidence. It's like, no. Your evidence doesn't line up with what you're saying. Yes, there's evidence there, but your evidence doesn't break down logically. You're trying to say that it wiped out all the dinosaurs instantly, or over slow periods of time, but that's not what we see. It's not what the case was. They died rapidly, and we find them in suffocation mode. Their head back, gasping for air. I mean, most of the bones are irradiated layer. You can't even be near bones. Did you know that? Because radiation seeps into them, and it's dangerous. So that's why when you go to museums, you see them, they're painted brown. That's because they have iron that they paint over them so that they don't emit radiation. They're dangerous to even be around.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, dangerous to handle dinosaur bones.
Didn't they find dinosaurs too with like grass or in their mouth?
Yeah, that was woolly mammoths. But yeah, which is also funny, and it brings up like number 45 in my book. Guess what? Grass wasn't supposed to have evolved until 55 million years ago. What's grass doing in a dinosaur's mouth that died 65 million years ago?
Yeah.
You know what's funny? You know what's funny too is they'll make fun of Job 40, where the Bible says that Behemoth eateth grass as an ox, and they're like, "Ha ha! See, we got you, creationists, because Behemoth. We know that dinosaurs didn't eat grass. They ate each other. They ate meat. Well, we literally test their feces through copper lights and different methods, and we see that the dinosaur feces has grass in it, that they ate grass as well. So it's just, and they say 65 million years ago, dinosaurs died out. 55 million years ago, grass came into being. Well, if dinosaurs never saw grass, then why is there grass in the feces?
It's so simple, right? Such simple logic, but their minds can't wrap around it because their religion of evolution doesn't allow them to think about that. Their rescue devices just get worse the more they think, the more they try to contemplate it. It's like when they find dinosaur tracks in deeper layers, but no dinosaurs, and then dinosaurs dead above it. They go, to them, that's like their mind can't wrap their brain around it. But that's the thing. It's so simple. It's like, yes, because they were running uphill away from the flood. Those aren't millions of years. That's why you don't find dinosaur bones in those layers, because those layers aren't millions of years. Those layers are the same time. It's the dinosaur running up. It's like the reason you find the trilobites on the same trail going through millions of years. It's the same. It's just logical that it's obviously not millions of years.
This is incredible. Dr. Raw Matt, thank you so much for taking the time out of your schedule to come on tonight. I think it'd be awesome if we could have you come on in person sometime. If you're ever up in Michigan, or maybe after the movie comes out, we'll arrange.
Where are you located out of?
I'm in Palm Springs, California.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's a long ways.
Yeah, it's a long ways, but if I do another creation movie, definitely going to be reaching out to you. And but I'm excited, and I think we're going to have you back on soon. Paul and I would love to have you back on and do another episode with you.
Okay.
And I think it would be cool if we could have like a conversation between you and Dr. Kent Hovind, and just talk about different flood evidences and different stuff that you've covered. And I think Dr. Hovind would absolutely love some of the material that you shared with us today. I think he'd love it. And I think that, in fact, I'm going to send him this episode when we release it. And with all that being said, Dr. Raw Matt, did you have anything else that you wanted to share before we close out the episode?
Well, one is Kent is already extremely good at the flood. I mean, if he had even more evidence, he already destroys people when it's a flood debate time on flood. I mean, if you're going to debate Kent, don't do it on the flood. He's going to kill you.
Yeah,
Pick a topic. It doesn't matter. He's good at the flood. And I would have to say that, Standing for Truth is going to be doing some more live stuff. So my main channel is with Standing for Truth. And we've been taking it to people. Aaron Raw has completely run. He's completely dodged everything. There's Gutsick Gibbon. She's dodged. She said, she's actually said, I'm not even responding to you guys anymore. So she's actually just tapped out and left.
I can't believe she gave up. She was actually trying hard there for a little bit, but I think after Standing for Truth debated her, she didn't want it anymore.
No. Yeah, we've just been aggressively attacking. See, what happened is, we're the nice Christians. You know what I mean? We're trying to help the people and tell them, you were lied to. Let me show you in your own book where you were lied to, and that there's another theory. And the ones that get mad at us, we just shut the book on them and we attack because we are aggressive people, right? And so they're not used to that. Now they're playing the victim card. all of a sudden. So the haters, the mockers, the trash talkers are now backpedaling, mad at us and calling us the meanies. So I find it kind of funny because being an atheist not long ago myself and an evolutionist, I was aggressive. I'm a cage fighter, so I'm aggressive in back, and I haven't I mastered the Jesus turn the other cheek yet. So I'm an aggressive guy. So when I'm met with force, when I'm trying to be kind, I'm not like, oh well, okay, let me just take a deep breath and calm down and figure out why you're mad. I just immediately fight fire with fire, and they don't like it. But in reality, I'm doing them the favor. I'm really stepping out of my boundary because I don't like arguing. I'm trying to help.
It's funny because Gutstick Gibbon, and I've listened to her stuff before, and she actually has said, I'm doing all this research. I am going to debunk Team Standing for Truth, my YouTube channel. She even told Aaron Ra on his channel, she says, I will debunk Team Standing for Truth. You watch, Aaron. You just watch. She gives up, throws in the towel.
Yeah, throws in the towel, says I'm not going to debate them anymore until they start answering questions. So I was like, answering questions? I thought we answered all your questions. So what I did is I just take certain parts of her video and just answer every question. So she can't even say we don't answer it. It's like I just played your section and literally answered every question that you had. So, that was one of my last videos. There was one where I took Dr. Jensen's chart, and he was showing the genetic diversity between all people on Earth. And the largest genetic diversity that anybody has is between an African group of people. And a Sands individual has 127 different nucleotide differences. And so she came out and said, that's impossible. You can't do that. Jensen just lied to everybody and said it's ridiculous because he used a 15-year age reproduction, a generation time, and he was being ridiculous for doing that. So I made a video showing, no, that's completely in line with what's still happening today there. So I don't think I'll ever get a response, but in reality, the video was a favor to her. They take it offensively. That's what's funny, is because it is their religion. It's like somebody literally coming in and making fun of everything that you believe in. They essentially see that that's what we're doing. And in reality, we're just giving them the alternative. But remember, their job requires it. Like Dan and Erica, Aaron, their career is built around evolution. They need it to be true, because if it's not, it's over. No future, no income, no government grants, nothing. It's done. So it has to be true. That's why they'll never concede that we're right, even if they know that they're wrong. They'll never say it. They can't.
Incredible. Professing themselves to be wise, they became fools. Dr. Raw, Matt, thank you so much for coming on. And Paul, thank you so much for putting this show together and making this thing roll. This was an awesome episode tonight.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Dr. Matt.
Oh, thanks for having me on, guys.
Have a good day.
Till next time.
All right, guys. Well, I went to go show his website, and I logged into YouTube. I was going to go show his Standing for Truth website, and again, guys, good night. This is my backup channel. It says your content was removed due to violation of community guidelines. So
wow.
I just can't get, these people are out of control with their strikes. It's like I can't even, this is my backup channel.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, they attack and attack and attack. Remember, we're fighting an uphill battle. But the scriptures tell us we'll never win. Matter of fact, it tells us it's going to get worse. So, we're fighting a losing battle. Creation will never be, take over and be everywhere. No one's going to be a creationist all over the earth. You know what I mean? It's going to be getting worse as time goes on. But we know that. It's just we're trying to get the truth out there. So no matter what, truth is offensive. We're supposed to be the salt of the earth, though. That's it.
Amen.
Well, yeah, guys, make sure you head over to our backup channels, because I don't even know how long I'm going to be on our backup channel on YouTube. So make sure you head over to our BitChute and Brighteon channels and subscribe over there. That is kind of where we're moving to, guys. And UGTube. I don't know if you guys heard that. UGEtube.com. Definitely go check out those 3 sites. Those are going to be the main ones: Brighteon, BitChute, and UGTube. Good episode though tonight, man. This is really got my mind thinking, because I always dismiss that the Pangea theory, so I never really thought of the plate tectonics pushing the continents so far apart. I'm gonna have to do some research on that.
No problem. I have a good video on my channel if you want to watch it. It's called The Greatest Flood Model There Is, and it's got a picture of Noah's Ark on the ice. And that video it's very long, but I cover a lot, so you might like that one. I need to revise it because I have a new intro and stuff like that. But man, making these videos is a long process.
Yeah,
and it takes a lot to edit.
Yeah, I can relate to that.
Right on. Well, thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and we hope that you enjoyed this episode of Answers in Creation. This was episode 8, covering the most crazy, wild stuff that evolution teaches. So thanks again, everybody. God bless.
Thank you so much for subscribing to Framing the World. You can also support us on Patreon. Thanks for watching. FramingTheWorld.com